Hello, everyone. I see we have 2 or 3 attendees. We're going to wait just a little bit so everyone can hop on, and we'll get started shortly. All right. We have quite a few people on now, so I'm going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the program preview of the Master of Science in Innovation and Venture Development. This is a new program launching in fall 2020, and it is a partnership between the IRRA, Fulton Schools of Engineering, W.P. Carey School of Business, and then the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts. Why are you not going? Here we go. Okay, so my name is Corey Cisco. I am the coordinator senior at the design school, which is housed within the Herberger Institute for Design and Arts. And our agenda for today is we're going to do some introductions for our speakers that will be presenting later on. And then we have Dr. David Frakes here, who is going to do a brief presentation on the fundamental startup lessons relearned. And then I'm going to go into more details about admission requirements and the application process. Then we can get into details about tuition and financial aid, and then we'll open up for question and answers later on. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, I ask that you put them into the question and answer portion within Zoom, and we will get to those questions when we get to that portion of the presentation. So Cheryl Heller is the program director for the MSIVD program. She's also the director of design integration here, and she is housed within the W.P. Carey School of Business, the IRA, Fulton Schools of Engineering, and the Herberger Institute for Design and Arts. So please help me welcome Cheryl Heller.
Unmuting myself. Thanks, Corey, and thanks everyone for coming. We're thrilled that David could be with us to do this webinar. I just wanted to give you an overview introduction of the program. We've spoken about why the Innovation and Venture Development Program is different and why it's really appropriate for the world we're living in at this moment. The fact that 3 schools have come together to build it and design it is really remarkable, and they happen to be the 3 disciplines that are most needed for the success of any venture. So it means that within one program, students will become immersed in those 3 disciplines and understand how they work together. We are making the program available to any undergraduate degree. So whether you are a rocket scientist or in medicine, you're welcome to apply. It's experience-based. You will launch a venture. Think about it as not waiting until you graduate to start your life, but come in the fall and start your life now. And the skills that are taught in this program are the skills that help people not just survive in the future, but reinvent what the future ought to be. And that's why we think it's so important. And we've spoken a lot about the ecosystem that we're developing of advisors and mentors and faculty. But the cohort that students are coming into is really one of the most important components, because these are the students that will be your partners, your best friends, your instigators. And we're seeing already in the students that have applied a really remarkable group of students. And so that is one of the most telling aspects of the program, and these will be the people that you will learn as much from as with anybody else. And speaking of extraordinary mentors, advisors, as I said, we're really lucky to have David Frakes here to share some of his wisdom with you. He is a rock star as an engineer and as an educator and as a founder.
So David Frakes received his BS and MS degrees in electrical engineering and the MS degree in mechanical engineering and then the PhD degree in bioengineering, all from the Georgia Institute of Technology. In 2008, he joined the faculty at Arizona State University, where he was awarded the 2012 National Science Foundation Career Award and named the 2014 Innovator of the Year in the state of Arizona. Dr. Frakes joined Google in 2015, where he led teams in the Advanced Technologies and Projects Group. He joined Apple in 2019, where he served as a lead of camera software for the iPhone 11 family of products. And Dr. Frakes is currently an associate professor at the Georgia Institute of Technology. His general research interests include computer vision, medical devices, and fluid dynamics. And please help me welcome Dr. David Frakes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Corey. Really excited to be here today to get to talk to you about some things that I think are really relevant in the context of the MSIVD program. One of the reasons that my talk is titled Case Study and Fundamental Startup Lessons Relearned is because when I went through the sort of educational process of learning about starting a venture, it was exactly that, educational, but not experiential, which is very different from what the MSIVD program offers. There's so much more doing in this program that I probably would have had to relearn as many things when I started a venture myself. But I think there are some really interesting things to take away from what I'll talk about today. Next slide, please. I'll keep it pretty simple in terms of the points that I'm going to cover. 3 of them are here. Startup fundamentals. I'm sure everyone in the meeting has already heard these 3 things ad nauseum. Solve for pain in the market when you're looking for a problem to address. Pivot with conviction. If you're going to make a move to a new product, do it with passion and with conviction, not halfway. And then lastly, listen to the customer. And when I say listen, I mean on a number of different levels, and I think I'll unpack those a little bit for you today in the talk. These are in no particular order, by the way. They're not stack ranked in terms of importance, but they are all, of course, important in and of themselves. Next slide. So the example that I'm going to use for you today, this case study, is going to be the last company that I founded. It's called EndoVantage. And our product, as you see here, is all about finding, tracking, and treating aneurysms, brain aneurysms specifically. So I'll just give a little bit of background on those so that what I'm talking about. Bubble or all brain, and when the wall weakens, one of them will expand into a sort of bubble. Do you guys still have me? Okay, just making sure. I had a little glitch there. So when, let's see, is everyone hearing me okay? Looks like we're having some audio issues. Okay, sounds better now. Maybe I'm yelling too loud.
Yeah, no, David, you're back. I think if we lost you a little bit on the introduction to the brain aneurysm. So I think if you could back up for just one, maybe start that again, that'd be great.
Good, thank you to the attendees for letting me know. So yeah, an aneurysm is basically a weakening of the blood vessel wall in the brain where the vessel actually kind of balloons out like you see here in this figure. And we knew in the history of studying this problem that it's a lot to do with how the disease presents itself and how these lesions actually progress over time. So this is where our startup thought came from. Because fluid mechanics are so important to how these lesions change over time, whether they grow and burst, which is very dangerous, of course. Well, if we could show a doctor how a treatment is going to change blood flow in an aneurysm, well, that must be really important. So let's build that product. And what we did was we invested in a computational fluid dynamics product that would allow us to put a medical device virtually into an aneurysm and see how flow would change. And that's what you're seeing here on the left and right of the slide. So before treatment is on the left, after treatment is on the right. So this is essentially what we presented to doctors. And and said, you know, hey, and the answer that we got was pretty consistent. It was, wow, it was cool, this is amazing. And these are all positive adjectives, but can also sort of be the kiss of death when it comes to taking a product to market, because nobody was saying, when can I have it? How do I get it? How much does it cost? And what we learned was that although we were solving for something we thought was pain in the market, it was really just a nice to have. So we went deeper with the customer. Next slide. And spent some time in the, in the operating room with the doctors who we worked with, finding out, okay, where is the pain if we're not already addressing it? And what many of them told us was, okay, this fluid dynamics stuff is great. We're super interested in it. It's a great research project, but we can't even choose the right size of the device to use. Half the time we go in and try to install a stent into one of these blood vessels, which is what you see here, and we can't choose the right one because it's so hard to tell which one's going to fit. Okay, so we pivot the company. We redirect at fit-based treatment plan, helping the doctor choose the right size. That's a clear, simple problem. They have pain with this. They want it right away because it helps them do their job, keep patients off the table for long periods of time, and use fewer devices. Great. So that was pivot number one. Doctors then said, all right, let's close the deal. Let's start using your software. Walk down the hall to our hospital administrator, and they're the ones who actually sign the PO. So after you have a conversation with them, we'll pay you, get your product, and we'll start doing work. So that's what we did. Walk down the hall, the hospital administrator pays the bills, and time after time, that person took a step back and said, well, okay, I guess I get to the doctors, want this because it makes their job easier, but how does this make us money? Is this actually going to save us any dollars and cents? Because we're already crunched on budgets, our margins are down, and we can't actually, focus our funds on treating patients better if we can't make any money, because we won't exist as a hospital. So what we need is a product that doesn't just apply to the small number of patients who have brain surgery, but to all the patients who come in with aneurysms who we often don't treat because they're not dangerous. Next. So this is pivot number two. We shifted the company to focus on more of a complete product, more of a management of aneurysm product before getting to treatment. That's where we added this tracking component. So what we did here was we said, okay, we have this great 3D modeling platform. We can look at these aneurysms over time. Now let's find a way so that we're not just focusing on patients who have brain surgery, which is a small percentage, but every patient with an aneurysm that comes in. So we create a platform where the doctors could see how these changed over time. And that's how they actually make decisions in terms of whether to treat the aneurysm or not. Okay, so now we've got the toothbrush, so to speak. It applies to every patient that comes in, not just the ones who need extreme care. So we should be getting to a point where we can sell this thing now. Go back to the hospital administrators, show them this, they are encouraged, but still they say, how do we know this is gonna help us make money? I mean, maybe it has us doing more surgeries because we can see when the aneurysms grow, but maybe it has us doing less surgeries because we can see that they don't need to be treated, and then we're not making money. So we ran up against the wall again in terms of what do we actually need to show this community in order to sell a product. And this is when I get to listening to the customer, because sometimes customers will say things that are almost humorous, but when you actually unpack what they're communicating, you can get very insightful information into what they need. And what the hospital administrators told us was, you know what we actually need? More patients. We need more patients. Ours is a volume business. We need to get more people through the pipeline. We all kind of chuckled and said, well, that'd be great. I wish we could do that. And we started thinking about it a little bit more, and we realized that we could, because we have this massive database of aneurysms, and we could train a machine learning model to look at all the head scans that come into a hospital and find aneurysms that doctors wouldn't have even seen before. So in that way, we're able to create more patients for them to track and treat. Next slide. So it becomes a win for the patients. They get better care. This is the aneurysm identification module you're seeing here. Our software will go in and find aneurysms in the cerebrovasculature that maybe a doctor wouldn't have caught. So we can find these, we can now track them as a means of planning up to surgery. And then when it's time to do surgery, we can help them choose the right medical device to execute the procedure. This is when we got the entire package together. I think this last pivot happened in the fall of 2019. And it was a matter of months after that to where we started getting takeout offers on the company. I can't talk, unfortunately, just yet about where the company stands, but I'll just leave it at the fact that I will have very good news to report in about a month. And that was really the signal, okay, we really tied it together because it didn't take long for people to take notice and for the company to essentially be acquired shortly after. But I think what I want to sort of give away, or for all of you to take away, is that even though we've learned all these things before, right? Solve for pain in the market, great. Pivot with conviction, listen to the customer. We know these things, but when I was sitting in the room with a hospital administrator and he said, well, we just need more patients, I almost didn't even think about it and look into how that could make a better product. It was just a comment in passing. These aren't things we get to check off the list as we go down the road of building and creating and eventually selling, hopefully, a startup. They're things we have to keep doing every day because the messages that are there, they're non-obvious. Even though these are simple tasks, they're not easy. So keeping focus on them and making sure that we're not losing out on opportunities, I think is really important. And again, to come full circle, next slide, to come full circle, this sort of process of living these lessons, not just learning them and then going out and trying to do something, but living these lessons is something that's really embedded in the MSIVD program. And had I had like on the job training, so to speak, and building ventures and experiencing that before I was doing companies of my own, it might not have taken me as long to figure this out. So take those 3 lessons with you. They are absolutely simple, but absolutely not easy. You do have to focus on them and continue to practice them throughout your venture. And luckily we got there with this product. And yeah, I wish you all the best in your next ventures. Thank you.
And David, before we move on, we had a question come in that's directly related to what you're talking about here. So what would you estimate the total time was from coming up with the original idea to the final pivot?
Oh, to the final pivot? Let's see. So we founded the company about 8 years ago, 8 years. So very long time. This is exceedingly long for startup timelines. We were in a position where thankfully we had very strong revenues. So we were in good shape. We weren't in danger of, of drying up and going away, but we also weren't making it big. So yeah, short answer, I would say that it was about a 7-year span to the final pivot, but that's like ice ages and startup time. Most companies don't go that long before getting it right. We were just fortunate to have some revenue support that could sustain us while we figured it out.
Wonderful, thank you.
David, you mentioned that this was one of the things you founded. How many startups have you started?
Let's see. I haven't counted lately, but I would say 5 to 7. 5 to 7, yeah, more than 5, less than 10.
That's amazing. One of the things I have heard students thinking about, or applicants thinking about, is what's the benefit of getting a degree, and what's the benefit of having this experience-based learning in the context of a university environment instead of just going out to try it or just putting some money together, or just joining an incubator or accelerator?
Yeah, well, I guess initial thoughts, we see a lot of technology come out of universities, right? And so you have to ask yourself, why is that the case? Why doesn't it just all come from industry where people are more focused on products, right? Why does technology that eventually becomes a product come out of a university in the first place? And one of the reasons for that is the time horizon. You know, I've spent the last 5 years in a couple of very large companies, so I can tell you quite conclusively that thinking is driven by next quarter's profits. It's driven by next quarter's earnings. The meter stick that you're judged by is very much about your near-term performance. And this makes it hard to look out 1 year, 2 years, and to spend time developing things that have a lot of value in the long term, but may not help you in the short term. And so I think that universities do a great job of keeping that greenfield space open so that there is freedom to explore ideas that will change the world in a couple of years, but that would never get off the ground in a company because they're not going to help with earnings next quarter. So I think, yeah, time horizon and the opportunity to look far enough out there to really try something crazy ambitious and pull it off.
That's great, thanks. And Corey, there's another question.
Yes, so how valuable would you say a transdisciplinary education would be at Google or Apple?
Okay, let me think about that. I think it really depends on the role. And what I mean by that is that, you know, you have a lot of people in these companies that are hired to do like very specific jobs, right? At Apple, like if you're hired to be an RF engineer and get the antenna right, you know, that's what you're going to focus on. It's very nuts and bolts, and you have to be like top notch at those specific things. When it comes to product roles, and you know, I'll just be candid here. These are the roles where the power structure really sits in these companies. When it comes to product roles, the transdisciplinary degree is incredibly valuable because it allows you to see all the different parts of the product. And I see a lot of engineers try to go into product roles like product management or product ownership roles, and like they get the engineering, but they don't really get the business, and they don't get the, you know, the social side of what a product needs to be successful, right? And then you have people coming from the other side, people who are really gifted at marketing and other, you know, business sciences, if you will, but they don't get the nuts and bolts of the technology. So I think at the product level, which is where people have to be when they keep climbing the ladder at these companies, the transdisciplinary skill set is basically required. Not everyone builds it in the form of a degree, right? They'll build it in the form of working on different products and pulling in skills from the experiences they have at these companies. But if someone has a degree that really makes them skilled in these very different parts of product ownership, I think it's a head start to leadership at companies like Google and Apple. I really do.
Wonderful. We're running out of time, so I want to go quickly through the application procedures, and then I will get to the 2 questions that we have up now. And thank you so much, David.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, so the application requirements, as Cheryl mentioned earlier, anyone with a bachelor's degree is eligible for this master's program. So some of the requirements to apply are official transcripts. So you can either request your official transcripts right now. Due to COVID-19, I know there is some delay in requesting those, so you may actually upload your unofficial transcripts directly to the application in order to speed up the process. Your official transcripts will be required later on if you are admitted into the program. And if you are an international student, you are required to submit an English proficiency score. So I know testing centers have been closed in various countries, so ASU is accepting the Duolingo test right now, which will allow you to take the test at home. So if you are interested in that option, please reach out to us. We can connect you with the right resources. Then a resume is required for the application, as well as a letter of intent. So the letter of intent is important in this application process. It'll essentially ask you what your innovation and entrepreneurial experiences and what has, what has inspired you to apply to this program. So that is something that they will take into consideration. Once that has been reviewed, then if you are moving on to the next step, then we will send some follow-up questions for you to answer, and a 30-minute interview online will be required for you as well. The application deadline is June 30th. for fall 2020. And application fee waivers were given to applicants who applied by the priority deadline, which was April 15th. If you have any questions about that, you can directly email Jacqueline Collins, who is the graduate coordinator for this program. Her information will be included later on in the presentation. And then there is the direct link to the MSIVD program. So if you haven't looked at the website already, please go ahead and do so. For tuition and fee structure, so this is what the fee structure is for an Arizona resident. So the standard ASU tuition is right up at the top. Then the program fee is $4,000 per semester. And then there are some other university fees associated. This is per semester. So every semester that you are enrolled in the program, this would be around what you're going to be paying for an Arizona resident. If you are not an Arizona resident interested in the program, please utilize this link below. You can calculate your specific tuition rate according to your background. And if you have any questions about that, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you. This program is also STEM designated, which means that there are numerous benefits to being a part of a STEM designated program. So for instance, veterans are eligible for additional funding, international students are eligible for OPT extensions and also different funding opportunities. So I suggest looking into some of those funding opportunities if they apply to you. All right, so this is where we're going to open up for questions. So I do see some questions coming in. So I will address a few of the application questions, and then I see a few for David and Cheryl. So first is, does your bachelor's degree and background determine what role and project you work on for this master's degree? Cheryl, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And obviously we are looking forward to people bringing their experience and their education and working on a team. The students will get to decide what pain point they want to work on. So whatever itch you want to scratch, whatever passion you have coming in, there'll be an opportunity for you to develop a pain point or work with an archive that we've been developing. And then, yes, I think it's sort of self-organized teams, and we are assuming that engineers will contribute that perspective to the team, and that business people will contribute that perspective. And the outcome will be an understanding of how those different disciplines work together. But we are not expecting someone to change their stripes or their undergraduate degree or their interest to be a part of the team.
Thanks, Cheryl. And then David, I see a question here from Aaron. So he said one of the biggest challenges to education is turning learnings from experience into teachable systems. Can you talk about how you personally and how this program are set up to do that?
Sorry, I was muted there for a second. Trying to find this question in the list.
It's in the chat instead of the question.
Oh, okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I could read it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges to education is turning learning to experience. Yeah, totally agree. Can you talk about how you personally and how this program are set up to do that? Yeah, okay, so I'm interpreting this as you know, how do we actually deliver educational learnings, experiences, et cetera, that translate into, that turn into skills that are like applicable in the market and usable. So if I'm missing that, then let me know. First off, I think that, you know, being really committed to an active learning style is important as an instructor. I was talking to Cheryl about this actually before we got on the live webinar thing here. And one of the things that's sort of backward about academia and in large part the university system is that engineers, for example, come up through the undergraduate degree and they're taught almost exclusively by career academics who've never been in industry. And that population of engineers that's being taught go not exclusively, but almost exclusively to industry. Like very few people go on to just to be academic professors, et cetera. So it's kind of a mismatch. And so I think what I try to do is I really try to back propagate what I've seen that young engineers and employees need to do in the work environment, and make that the basis for my curriculum that I design. So that's really not that complicated for me because I've been in both places. So I really focus on what someone needs to learn and be able to do in order to be successful in the work environment. But to really condense that and make it as simple as possible, I focus on teaching skills and not knowledge. Knowledge is awesome. I'm very much in favor of it. But knowledge without the ability to action it is not useful. And the analogy I always like to use is, you can know every single thing there is to know about the game of basketball, for example, but that doesn't mean you can play. And so I focus on teaching the skills, the actionable skills that I've seen people need to have to be successful in industry. That was sort of part one. I'll try to be not so long-winded on part two, but the program, from what I've seen as an advisor, is set up to do this because the program is about doing in the first place. You will do in the program what you need to do in the world to be successful. And in that way, even though it's taught, in the arena of the university, you're practicing what you will play in the real world. And that's the best way I think I know to describe it.
That's great. And if I can just add one point, because this program is based on studios, it's exactly right. It's just play basketball, fly fishing, right? You don't learn a theory and then discover that you're able to do it. The curriculum that we're developing is about creating the experiences for people so that you are setting your own milestones, you're developing skills by actually doing it.
Perfect. And then Cheryl, I don't know if you want to go into a little bit more detail. We just had a question that says, can you please describe the classes a little more and how are the classes set up? And then what would be some of the daily activities that we would be doing?
I would be more than happy to answer that, but we're running over already. So I would love to get on the phone or send a longer written description, because it's not a fast answer to do it justice. So
yes, and we'll be following up with some of the questions that we have not been able to address today. And this is the information to the graduate coordinator of the MSIVD program, Jacqueline Collins. Please email her or give her a call if you have any questions about that. And then we will be following up, like I said, with the questions that were posed that we weren't able to get to today. And thank you, David and Cheryl, so much for joining us. And then thanks everyone online for joining us as well. And we hope that you apply and we will be in touch.
thank you, David, and thank you, Corey.
Thanks for having me.